All right, checklist, post-its, digital planners, and more. Maybe use one or multiple of these to keep you on track during the week. Whatever your organization style, it's really common to feel like we're constantly playing catch up or feeling guilty for not getting enough done during the workday in order to truly enjoy like valuable rest with our families, which is probably the reason why we started working from home in the first place. So today I have connected with Professor Charlie, Profe Charlie, who has two simple things he does each week to help keep him on top of his many tasks as an independent online teacher. So Charlie, welcome.
Hey there, Melissa. Thanks for having me.
So good to have you. Well, we connected over organizational similarities, perhaps using Notion. And I would just love to have people hear kind of how you are running your successful teaching business. Could you share a little bit about the things that you've got going on as a solopreneur?
Yeah, so the two main things in terms of organizational, adjustments and also like methods that I use currently are like a weekly reflection and then creating like a weekly schedule with like a checklist.
Yeah.
And the reflection is pretty clear within itself, but the checklist, like it's going to depend on how you want to do it. And so, is it cool if I share my screen right now to show that?
Yeah, but I would love for us to even hear like what are you organizing? I know
Yeah,
for
right,
myself at least, I've
right.
got like socials,
Good
I've
call.
got lesson plans, I've got financials, I've got personal financials, a few different revenue streams. So what are you working with just so that people have a little bit more context for you?
Yeah, so I basically am an English communications coach for Spanish speaking professionals. And so what that entails is like teaching kind of one-on-one and online courses to Spanish speaking professionals. Additionally, at the beginning, it I used to be kind of a traditional English teacher, got my students from referrals, and that was back then when anybody could, take a class with me, and that basically evolved. And I kind of experimented with social media, and after a certain amount of time, that gave me a lot of my clients. Now I would say most of my clients come from social media, and that started to lead to other things as well in terms of like a members club that I have. So not just, one-on-one classes, but also, group and more kind of like, you know, speaking club classes. So stuff like that. And so
You've
really
got
what
a
I'm
few different things
organizing
going on.
is
Yeah.
yeah, it's a whole it scales up from like, asynchronous stuff up until the most personalized stuff as well. So, to keep that all organized, and to keep the flow of students and clients coming in, I needed some type of system that included, planning for clubs, planning for marketing, which can be social media and also newsletter, and then, of course, that is instruction, which is teaching, and then additionally online courses as well. So it is a lot, but basically that is what I am. That's kind of what I'm managing right now. On top of stuff like professional development and learning how to do those types of things and continuously learning. So it's a lot to manage.
It's a lot. And I feel you. I think a lot of people watching this will also are kind of in that boat. We're ducks under the water, just paddling real fast, trying to get,
Hmm.
socials out there, marketing out there, but like actually produce. I love that you're doing asynchronous stuff. I somehow missed that you're doing that too. So that requires some recording time, some editing time, some posting time. You never really understand how much goes into that, getting the course uploaded type thing. So there's just a lot out there to do during the week, and then to keep it all running smoothly is really important. So I love
Hmm.
that. Now you have a few different two things really that you do each week, and they were. This is why it was so impactful. It's so simple. It's so stinking simple, and you are committed enough to it that it works well for you. Can you kind of walk us through what that looks like? You said your reflection and kind of your guideposts, and then being realistic with goals. Can you walk us through what goals you kind of put in and how you are realistic about those goals each week?
Yeah, so the basically a little like forward into this was when I first started teaching at a language school, I had come from the world of journalism where you literally can't plan, like it's almost impossible to plan your days. And because when news breaks, like you cover it, and that's the way it works. And so when I got into teaching, I was like, oh my god, I can basically do all the work that I need and then shut the computer.
Mhm.
And I noticed at the language school that almost everybody would plan, the class, right before the class or the day of the class. And at the beginning, I did that as well. And then I learned, like, what if I just planned all the classes like the week before? And if something comes up, I can add it. And I noticed the stress levels went down and down and down. And I was like, this is actually not that much work when you think about it, because you're doing like, if you're doing between like at language schools, a lot of people, at least in Costa Rica where I lived, did between like 15 and 20 hours. That's like, I mean, a lot of people work 40 hours. And so if you're efficient with your planning, you can get away with doing 30 hours, maybe even less at some points. And that could also allow you to work more. So, but if you're always trying to catch up, I recognized first, like, that's a feeling that I want to always have that feeling, or do I want to do something to change that? And so one of the things that I did, um with one of the things I did like recently, was created like a weekly to-do list. I
Mhm.
used to have it as a daily to-do, but with the daily to-dos, I noticed that, like, if I don't get to it, I kind of push it back to like the
Mhm.
next day. But if you don't know what the next day has, like, you might continuously be pushing it back. And I realized, like, for me, that was going to be the deal. Like, there's going to be something there that I could do in 45 minutes, and I'm never going to want to do it. And it kept getting pushed back. And so, but in my weekly to-do list, um, I can see like where I have time in the week. And that allowed me to, okay, Thursday, I have like, some extra time. I can do it on Thursday. So I'm going to share my weekly to-do list, and this goes hand in hand with the reflection that I do. So I'll share that afterwards. But
Cool.
this weekly to-do list, basically consists of all the activities that I have to do, during the week. So here you can see this part's in Spanish, but the rest of it is in English. I have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, up till Saturday. And the classes that I teach, or the sessions that I instruct, are already in like a Google schedule. So I have the amount of time that I teach that week, in this part here, where it will say like 2.5. I've actually just recently moved, so this week's a little bit less, teaching time. But for example, Friday, there's 5 hours. And so that way I know, like, all right, probably don't put too much stuff there for Friday. Um, and basically, before I did this, what I decided was like to track a week of
Mhm.
how I actually work. Because we kind of know the tasks that we do, but until you actually write down how much time you're spending on them, you don't really know. Like, one of the biggest things was, I would not, like, almost nobody tracks this, like, at the time that you spend at answering questions and talking to clients. And I realized, like, why am I so tired if I'm only working like this many hours a day? That's because every like little downtime I was answering questions, or trying to do admin stuff. And I realized, like, that's not a very efficient way of doing it. So the same type of
I
thing with
love
like
that you include that
planning
because that's
classes. And yeah.
it's super time consuming, especially if you are, I guess, maybe after a little bit you kind of have some pat answers of like, this is what we're going to do, this is how you respond if somebody's canceling, whatever. You've got your policies in place, hopefully, by this point. But that's really important that you're factoring in all this communication time too. Sorry, keep
Yeah,
going.
yeah, and even stuff like plan the next day, like,
Mm,
it takes 2 minutes. It's never, for me, it might take, yeah, it's gonna take 1 minute usually, or 2 minutes. But, um, it is time, and it is something on the to-do list. And if you do the whole day and you don't plan your next day, and you wake up the next morning like, "Oh my god, what do I have to do today?" And I found that that was not great. So all of the things that I put on the list are from experiences of like, "Oh, I really should have that on the list." And so I decided the main things that I'm going to do each day: planning classes, checking leads, and planning the next day, also answering these questions. And basically, what that allows me to do is, once I schedule that time in, or I estimate how much time I would need. If we realistically plan classes for 15 minutes a day, you will probably I get almost all of these classes done by Thursday.
mhm.
Like, I probably don't need the last two times, or like that Friday, and sometimes I don't even need that Thursday. Because Monday and Tuesday, you spend half an hour planning classes. They're intentional. You can get a lot done. And what that allows me to do is, okay, so I have this amount of time for the daily stuff, this amount of time for the courses that I'm teaching, and so the rest of it kind of goes under this line here. So that's where a lot of times socials come in. And what I've done, luckily, I've gotten to a point where I can take one day of the week to mainly focus on socials, and I just kind of batch plan everything and record it, and that seemed to work for me. But basically here, there's a lot what you'll see is a lot of things that, I didn't used to plan. My finances into my work schedule, that used to be something that was outside of work, but really I have to be contacting clients. So it is a work thing. I put it in there. It's part of my work time. And then that's included. But what I realized here is just be realistic. If you're realistic with the amount of time, and you can always float on the side of giving yourself more time, um, and you do the things, like, you will spend that amount of time. Like, if I put, for example, here, 5 hours and 30 minutes, it took 5 hours and 30 minutes probably. So, it wasn't like, there's no, like, unpredictable stuff, like, and that to me is the biggest thing. You finish the day and you're like, "Alright, I am done," right? As long as I'm paying attention to the amount that I'm doing, and including breaks in here too as well is something that I've done. So um yeah, that's kind of like the my how I organize my week. There's some other things with like socials here. I have like the numbers, and that's because up here I have like my routine that I have during the week for social media, and it's the same type of thing, realistic with time, check marks. And I found that, whatever organizational system you use, if you're realistic with your time, um it'll be fine.
Hey, Charlie. Sorry about that. Can you hear
Hello.
me?
Yeah, yeah. Mhm. Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah. Now I can't because 'cause you're on mute, but I could. Yeah. Yeah. Can you hear me well? Okay, there we go. So I'm gonna go through then. I'm gonna keep going through my reflection. So basically, the way that I've found like the things that I need to do throughout the week is by having a reflection. And so what this reflection does is like I've divided it into the main categories of my business. So here we have like I'm gonna share my screen to get to the reflection part, but I divided it into my members club, basically the social media side, and then the classes themselves. So doing that, what it's allowed me to do is focus specifically on the tasks, or on the three elements of my business that I decide to do. And so in this case, let's see if I can share. I don't know if Melissa has to do that, but I think, yeah. All right. Well, basically, what I would do with the reflection is, so I will write like things that I thought about that week. So for example, classes. I will say, okay, I raised prices, I got some new clients on board, this person finished their class, etc. Putting down some notes, just like a journal type of thing. And then the other thing that I'll do is then some other things that are inspiring to me, I'll write that in there as well. So actually, on like maybe a couple weeks ago, I had a doctor's appointment, and the doctor was super like well thought, a lot of knowledge, gave a lot of information, did a lot of extra stuff, and was very clear with it. And I was like, okay, that is like the experience that I want to give to my clients. And so that is something that I put in my reflection. Melissa, can you see that I'm sharing the screen? I don't see the. I'm trying to
I
share the screen, but I don't see it on here.
so sorry. There you go.
No, there we go. Okay, perfect.
Perfect.
This will
Sorry
make
about
more
that.
sense now seeing that. No, no worries. So here, for example, yeah, at the top, I've got some of the things that happened that week in classes, and then here, some of the things that inspired me, and then an action plan here. And so the action plan puts something on the to-do list. I don't always have to have something that's going to go on the to-do list. There's some weeks where it's nothing, but for example, like my I wanted to create like this thing with the doctor reminded me of like, okay, what is my intention? What is all the information I'm going to bring to the table? And then I also thought about scaling. Okay, so the next couple months will be a great opportunity to improve proof of concept, that type of stuff. Um, a lot of times we have these thoughts and we just let them go. We're like, yeah, it would be a good time, but you have to put them into action, otherwise they're not gonna happen. So I always have this AP here that is the action plan. And so, for example, this time, what I would do is put, a 30-minute or 45-minute session of creating this proof of concept like visualization, and that goes into my weekly schedule. And so, what that allows me to do is like make sure that I see it there. I know that it's something I'm going to do, and I treat it like something that's completely necessary. So, another to give another example here, like social media, I was looking at DM strategy and YouTube and stuff like that. Here I and on the to-do list, I was looking at my freebie. So that I was like, okay, DM strategy, it's something that can wait, or it's something that maybe the freebie will help with that. The YouTube, it was just some thoughts. There was nothing that I needed to put into action, but just to get some thoughts on paper. That's kind of like what I did. So the best thing that this has allowed me to do is like when we talk about that idea of, oh god, there's always something to do, the to-do list is never done, I'm swarmed with work, putting it all out on a paper and then scheduling it into your next week. The first 2 or 3 times you do it, it'll be overwhelming because you're not used to having a week like that. But after that, like, it becomes very easy, and you start to see things that are like, okay, this is not something on my to-do list necessarily. This is going to be something that I'm interested in. So the doctor point, like, oh, this doctor, like when I came in, like he gave me a lot of information about these two things in a very professional way. His setting was very professional. How can I create that for my clients? I'm going to give myself 45 minutes on Monday to think about that and design something, and then see what I implement. And I can put that back on the reflection for the next week. Hey, this is what I thought of. I'm gonna need to implement like a new freebie and a new, let's say, website design. Okay, that's gonna take 2 hours, put it back on. It's a cycle of just tasks, but this way it actually gets done instead of if you just put it on a to-do list that doesn't have dates, who knows if it gets done. So those two things personally like have are what works for me. But the main pillar is being realistic, because we all think that we can do the 6 or 7 tasks that we need to do, and in reality, it's not as easy as we think. So, yeah. Anyway, I see you, Melissa, but I cannot hear you. I'm not sure. But while we're waiting for Melissa, I can keep talking about kind of how this would apply to other teacher entrepreneurs. I think the main thing that again is being realistic with your time. If you can be realistic with your time, and by being realistic, like using actual signals of your time, so tracking how your week goes, tracking to see kind of how much time you're spending on each activity, being honest with yourself, then you can overestimate that time when you plan. And that way you can lower the amount of times you're underwhelmed or overwhelmed. I used to do this type of stuff where I was like, all right, I can do the planning I would be like not realistic necessarily. I would kind of underestimate the amount of time that I was spending on stuff. So, for example, I know that I could probably plan all my classes in 20 minutes today. But if I actually can't do that, like, what purpose does it serve to put that in my schedule? And so I find it's always good to overshoot the amount of time you spend on something. That way you'll have leftover time, and you're always going to have these like tasks that you need to do. It might still be a little bit overwhelming, but it will be much less overwhelming if you're realistic with your time.
It's huge. I am sorry for the technical issues, but as we talked about this before, I know the tips that Charlie's kind of laid out. So I am really grateful for the fact that you're sharing all these. It's amazing. Well, as somebody who's kind of heard these tips from you, I have since kind of laid out on my whiteboard over here the
Oh,
main
I'm curious how
tactics.
you've done it then. How have you laid it out on your whiteboard?
Yeah, so I've got like the social things that I need to get done, and I have yet to put in like the amount of time that it takes. But it's gotten pretty quick to the point where I know like what day of the week these things are going to happen. So like a post that usually goes with whatever YouTube content is going out that week, a reel that's usually related to that YouTube content, a pin that is linked to a blog post that is linked to a item that I'm selling in my store or the YouTube video, and then 2 emails that go out to my 2 separate email lists, 2 different audiences with homeschoolers and teacherpreneur type people. And so it's been really eye opening. So
I think you
that's
have
been
more
so
on your
easy
plate than
for
I do. Yeah, that's that's like so again, if you don't organize that, that can just get so it's already like semi chaotic in terms of the amount of things. And if you don't organize that, that could get, that could be very
really.
stressful, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes, to be completely transparent, sometimes one of them just gets crossed off, and I'm like, "There's no reel this week," or "There's no post."
Yeah, I actually do that too. After showing this, I will admit, like, there's times where I don't do the stuff, but like
Yeah.
one of the things that I find like peaceful about this is like if I don't do the stuff on my list, it's because I didn't do it. It's like it's not anyone else's fault. Like I set
Right.
it out, and like if someone else, like let's say I have a session with a potential new client, and it goes a little bit long, and so I spend too much time. Well, it's nobody's fault that I didn't end up doing that other thing on my to-do list. I can either decide to work more, or I can tell myself in the reflection, hey, the sessions are lasting 45 minutes instead of 30 minutes. Let's put 45 minutes there and then go back and being more realistic. The
Yeah.
time thing is, yeah, I guess starting with the days and then going to the times is a solid strategy. Yeah.
Yeah. It's helpful. And I think another step back is, we had talked about the idea of why we're working independently instead of maybe with
Oh
companies
yeah.
or in a nine to
Yeah.
five or in a language academy. Like for me, it's to be able to homeschool our kids and, to have that flexibility. I know you love traveling, and right now you're currently, recently moved and you've got a lot of flexibility there, but being able to
Right.
choose those options is really important, and to be able to live into them and not just oh, one day I'll take a vacation or one day
Mhm.
I'll be able to do this. No, like start now and build those systems up, which I think is what you've done. So
Yeah,
I'm
and your
clapping for you.
systems don't have to be like they don't have to be perfect. Like I will tell you that it's taken a long time to get to like the point where I optimize it, but that's what the reflection does. Is like every week you can say, "Hey, my systems aren't good. What can I do to improve that? How much time do I need to do that?" And then you do it. Like the reflection, that's like honestly, it's something that's like a lot. Like at the beginning, I was like, I don't need to do the reflection every week, but I realized like every time I do it, I'm looking forward in my business. I'm looking forward. Almost always we're just looking to try to like, or like to cover like the holes and to, put out fires.
Yeah.
That's like while that is necessary, it's hard to move forward that way.
Right. Well, and I love you pointed out the, like, for example, your new freebie. Like that is something that, me 4 months ago would have been, I even got asked this as an established teacherpreneur was like, "Hey, would you like to do a link swap with me?" And I was like, "I am so sorry, friend. I don't even have a link to swap with you. Like, I would
Wow.
love to have taken advantage of that opportunity, but I was not in that space. Now that I am, and
Wow.
I've got 3 freebies, and like I could think of a few more in the next few months that are going to be useful
Yeah.
right now.
Oh
It's
yeah.
not having that opportunity to reflect. So I love it.
Again, a good part on the reflection because you can say, "Hey, that was embarrassing. I didn't have a freebie. I couldn't do that." But and then saying, "Okay, put on the to-do list, make a freebie," and then you go step by step. But the good thing about that is like you're building something. It's not all you're not going to have the entire thing built. Like you're always going to keep improving. What the reflection does as well is it takes a little bit of that guilt away. Like I personally had a good example is like I'm like with my sometimes I'll meet with a new client and I kind of demand a lot from them in terms of like you want to come and have good like audio, good lighting, come on time. If you don't tell me, like you have to pay a $15 fee if you want to reschedule it if you don't tell me beforehand. And I had an emergency today, and I essentially like I was going to arrive a little bit late for a student, and I said something about, and it was the wrong time zone, and so it ended up not working out. And like that is shameful. Like, I felt, like, embarrassed. I'm like, That doesn't happen to me." It really doesn't. But, okay, what can I do when that thing happens? Well, if I'm saying, like, $15 when they don't come and they don't tell me, if I have a mistake, well, they can get a $15 credit. "Oh, great. I'm gonna put that in the reflection." And now then the client will find that fair. It's completely fair. And so that's the type of stuff where, like, in the past, I would have been like, "Oh my god, Charlie, like, the lesson is to get there on time." That's the lesson. You have to get there on time to avoid that. And but like when you think of it in like a reflection in your building, it's like, okay, like this happened. How can I avoid that this happens in the future? Of course, I want to get there on time, but like if it does happen, what's a fair way to go about it? And that way of thinking has helped me so much in like moving my business forward rather than just trying to like, cover bullet holes. So anyway, while Melissa is reconnecting, yeah, that mindset of this constant improvement and seeing your mistakes instead of mistakes as like learning experiences. That's one of the things that a reflection really helps with is, instead of seeing it as just this mistake that you have to correct, you're evaluating why it happened, how it happened, and then you're saying, what can I do to change that? And something like that with the $15, it's a simple 1 minute thing. That doesn't take any longer than 1 minute. I can go onto my calendar link and put that there. Hey, if the teacher or if the instructor doesn't come and has an emergency, you will get this credit if you decide to sign up for courses. And that's like a much better response and much more fair. And the good thing is like a lot of other teachers, companies might do it, but a lot of other like teachers and like entrepreneurs, they don't always do that type of stuff. And it's a crucial part, but it will help you get ahead and to consistently improve. And yeah, consistently improving and being realistic with your time. I think that those are like the biggest things that this like weekly to-do list and weekly reflection have allowed me to do. So, all right, now we have Melissa
Yeah, I
back.
am so
So
sorry. Well, I
anyway,
don't like to have this happen. Your example was perfect, but thank you so much. And I will go ahead and wrap here, but I do want to kind of bring things full circle and just ask, what are you loving about your space that you're occupying in kind of online teacher land right now?
yeah, I think it's the learning experiences and the flexibility. Like it's not completely flexible. Like you have to get to a certain point for it to be like completely flexible. But like, for example, I just moved to Germany with my girlfriend. She's doing a master's program. She did 1 year in Mexico, 6 months in Germany. And like the fact that I was able to go with her to both places, granted, it has been really hard. It has not been easy, but like for I'd say 90% of the population, if not more, that's just impossible. It's like an immediate no. And the fact that like I've been able to do that is just like wow. If I was doing any other profession, it wouldn't be possible. And so, but what it has also taught me is like, okay, in order to be able to, it's also not easy. Like when you do that, there's a lot of things you learn, like this type of organization. Hey, when you're going to Germany and you're going to need that week or 2 weeks to get settled in, you won't be able to teach. What do you do with the lost income? Okay. And then that lost income is more than just that, because then you have to put security deposits on renting and stuff like that. But if you just plan ahead, no, the when it's a little bit more predictable, it's a lot easier to deal with. It's still hard, but it's a lot easier to deal with. And I think that's the other thing, that being like that this is more on the entrepreneurial side, but that like kind of what goes around comes around type of thing, like, or not to blame other people for your mistakes. And that's one of the things that you can, like, when you work at a language academy or a language school and there's a miscommunication, you're like, well, the school should be doing it better. But like when you're your own boss, you're like,
On
okay,
you.
if all the clients, yeah, and oftentimes like clients will fall under patterns that are frustrating for you. Like if they're always late. All right, but if you're going to continue working with these clients, you're going to have to deal with it. What are you going to do to deal with it? Maybe it's not your fault, but it is your responsibility
Right.
if you're the one who's, going to be their leader. So that to me is like one of the biggest mindset shifts, like that has helped. Like blame, you can't blame, like you blame your not blaming yourself necessarily, but you have a certain responsibility in the way that you respond to that stuff. So
Yeah.
I'd say the flexibility and the lessons of like human psychology that has taught me for sure.
That's huge. Oh my gosh. Well, Charlie, I appreciate it. I appreciate you taking this on solo most of today, unfortunately.
No
But
problem. Yeah, happy to do so.
all right. Well, thank you so much. And if you would like to get in touch with Charlie, he is an awesome teacher and does a lot of great content on Instagram that I've seen. And you've got a few other things going on. All of that will be linked below, so you can check in with him. Charlie, thank you so much. I hope the next couple weeks as you
Thank you,
guys settle
Melissa.
in goes well. All right. And to
Yeah,
everybody
yeah, me
else
too.
watching this, thank you so much and happy teaching.